Extremists and radicals have got Sir Keir Starmer on the run, and he's about to get back into bed with Jeremy Corbyn. Starmer whipped his MPs to vote against a ceasefire a few months ago, and a third rebelled. He lost 8 shadow cabinet ministers. Now, Labour MPs are getting hounded everywhere they go, like Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves getting a verbal battering in the street again.
Why did you not vote for a ceasefire? Rachel, where are you going?
This is your country being genocide. We simply just want us.
Rachel, Israel's got a right to defend, but Palestine hasn't, Rachel. Why, Rachel? Why are Palestinians lesser people? Where are you going, Rachel?
Mr Starmer is having to deal with a raft of alternative campaign posters popping up as well. I stand with genocide, Tel Aviv, Keith is the latest that I've seen there. It's happening on a daily basis now. Labour made a big thing about appealing to the Muslim vote. Now, they've lost the Muslim vote and they've realised that they've made a mistake. In fact, they have literally lost the Muslim vote. The website has popped up, muslimvote.co.uk. They say they're backing candidates in every single constituency where the MP abstained or voted against a ceasefire. The pressure now is massive. And now, Keir Starmer has been backed into a corner by the SNP.
Week, SNP MPs will be bringing forward a motion to the House of Commons to back an immediate ceasefire. History will judge all of us by our words and by our actions.
So will Starmer tell Labour MPs to vote for the SNP motion? Well, Labour in Scotland have gone for it. Scotland's Labour leader Anil Sarwar has come out in favour, so he's broken ranks. Now, I asked Jonathan Reynolds, who is Labour's Shadow Secretary of State for Business and Trade, if he would vote for the SNP ceasefire motion.
The position the Labour Party has is that we want the fighting to stop, we want a cessation of violence, we want a serious, sustainable ceasefire. That means both sides, and we want a peace process out of that, and I think that is right. I think people saying that you ignore the fact that hostages are still being held, or that you somehow only think there's one side in this. We want both sides to be part of that ceasefire, and we want a proper, sustainable two-state peace process.
Didn't answer the question. And Wes Treating, who is one of the MPs who could lose his seat to a pro-Palestinian independent, well, he couldn't give a straight answer either.
See what their final wording...
Well, we have that. We have the final wording. It's been confirmed by the SNP.
I'm not sure it's been tabled. But
this House calls for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. Will you back that?
We will put our own position out. And will there be a Labour motion? Where we want to get to... Well, I'm not going to preempt... decisions that are being taken by colleagues.
Well, it's only 2 days away
what you
now.
might be doing. Well, then you won't mind waiting, will you?
They haven't got an answer. They haven't got an answer. And then Starmer comes out and says this.
End to the fighting, not just now, not just for a pause, but permanently. A ceasefire that lasts, conference, that is what must happen now. The fighting must stop now.
Well, that's not going to wash, is it? Will he vote for a ceasefire on Wednesday or not? And the latest development is that hard-left Jeremy Corbyn backing group Momentum have said they're going to start a lobbying blitz, encouraging people to call on Labour MPs to back the SNP's amendment, demanding an immediate ceasefire. So, if Keir Starmer caves into the old ceasefire cause, who's he on the same side as?
MPs just to wake up and think about what is happening in Gaza. Think what the International Court of Justice said, and think that there are now demonstrations today in 45 countries around the world. This is a global movement for Palestine. Is Britain going to be left behind in that global movement?
He'd also be caving into pressure from people like this woman, spotted on the so-called peaceful pro-Palestine protest at the weekend. Long live the Intifada. Intifada, of course, being a kind of violent insurrection there. And, of course, these people as well, who hounded a man stating the simple fact that Hamas are a terrorist group. Keir Starmer is facing his worst nightmare when the SNP hold a vote on a ceasefire. Labour are getting battered on social media. Labour MPs are getting hounded out of town wherever they go. He has lost the Muslim vote, and that is not coming back, no matter what he does. Why? because everyone knows where he really stands on this issue. He's been relatively pro-Israel, and that's all it takes. So if he caves in now, it's because he's been outfoxed politically, he's caving into a minority of political extremists, and he's trying to appease Jeremy Corbyn. It's worth noting then, isn't it, that this guy might soon have the keys to Downing Street. Let's get the thoughts of my panel. I have got Daily Express columnist Carol Malone. It's also journalist and commentator Mike Buckley and the former Brexit Party MEP Belinda de Lucy. Carol, is Sir Keir Starmer caving into extremists and he's about to get back into bed with Corbyn?
Yeah, of course it is. This is typical of slippery Starmer. It's political expediency above principle. It was only 4 months ago he said that a ceasefire was totally the wrong thing to do. He said it would embolden Hamas. It would stop Israel dismantling Hamas. He said it was completely the wrong move, and he said he would never cave into demands from people who were saying he had to change his mind. What has he done 4 months later? Because he knows the election's coming, because he knows the election in Rochdale is coming, he's caved in. Because he knows the Muslim vote, the Labour depends on the Muslim vote, and Corbyn is whipping up Muslim. There was an interesting, a Muslim youth organisation, the boss of that, a guy called Mohammed Shafiq, said today that Rochdale the by-election was a referendum on Gaza. It shouldn't be that. It should be for the needs of the people of Rochdale. And you know what's farcical to me? That Starmer's leadership and possibly the election results depends on a war that's being fought in a different country and has nothing to do with us. Why does Corbyn think stopping the war is our job, and that someone like Netanyahu is going to listen to what Keir Starmer says and say, OK, Keir, we'll stop this now?
All right. Keir Starmer's let this rumble on for quite a while, obviously.
I mean, just to go back to what you said, if Keir Starmer hadn't changed his views in 4 months, I would be worried, to be honest with you. That would be really odd in the context of
Why would it be odd?
Let's just think about the context we're in. 28,000 people have died now in Gaza, the majority of the women and children. I think it would be very odd.
Do we know that for a fact, or are we?
Yes, we do.
Are we believing Hamas?
It's the agreed figure, and there are lots of international observers there. I think there'd be something quite wrong with you if you didn't want that to stop. I mean, why would you want the fighting to continue, and why would you want women and children and men, particularly, to keep dying? Why on earth would any living human being want that? I cannot imagine. And you talk about Keir Starmer being in bed with extremists. You haven't actually pointed to any extremists he's in bed with or giving into, if I'm quite honest.
He's talking about
if you really want to play that game, he obviously did offer legal advice to Hizb ut-Tahrir, which are now, of course...
He was doing his job of Director of Public Prosecutions. He was a lawyer. Of course he has to do his job, you know. But you haven't actually pointed to any extremists you're getting into with now. If you look at people calling... If you just let me finish. If you look at people calling for a ceasefire, the US government today has just submitted a resolution to the UN saying we now want the fighting to stop. The French government, the German government, the Spanish government, Rishi Sunak himself... So how does he vote
on Wednesday?
Rishi Sunak himself...
Does he, on Wednesday, it comes around, he's got a straight choice between granting victory to the SNP, right, by voting for their ceasefire amendment, or... Losing more than a third of his MPs?
Who cares about the SNP motion? The SNP are simply troublemaking, and they're trying to put Labour in a difficult spot. I mean, that is obvious.
He's been outfoxed by the
SNP are just playing politics with this. But Keir Starmer's position is very, very clear. He gave a speech the other day. Yes, he did. He gave the other day saying he wants the violence to end now. He doesn't need to vote for an SNP resolution in Parliament to say that.
And 4 months ago, he said he didn't...
Who cares what he said 4 months ago? The situation has changed irrevocably in the last 4 months.
You mentioned the
4 months ago, 28,000 people hadn't died.
Stop shouting.
I'm not shouting at you.
You are.
I'm just making a very clear point.
I'm trying to talk and you're trying to drown out my point. And my point
Why don't you go ahead?
What has he said about the 1,200 people that were slaughtered in Israel? Has he said much about them? You're talking about the people who have been killed.
He's talked about that
What started this was the attack on
Israel.
Israel.
Made clear that
Let me get Belinda's view, and then I will come back to both of you. Belinda, I mean, from where I can see, if Keir Starmer caves in now and decides to vote for a ceasefire, is it not giving in to mob rule on the streets, do you think?
Yeah. He reminds me of that Churchill quote, an appeaser is one who feeds the crocodile in the hope it eats him last. And there is a lot of truth to this, and the Tory party are also responsible for appeasement and buckling down to Islamist mobs, and the hard left give Islamist mobs sanctuary. I've been the victim of Islamist bullying on quite a few occasions. I had to have the police involved one time. It is frightening, being harassed, being followed, being cornered by very raging males. And I've seen what's been happening to MPs, whether it's by the hard left or Islamist mobs. And I wonder whether Keir is frightened, if he doesn't come out with this stance, what's going to happen to his candidates at the next election as they go door knocking? Are they going to be faced with the threat of violence and intimidation? And maybe it's his way of trying to keep them safe, but what a way of buckling. We shouldn't be submitting to this. We should be defending and standing up.
This is political expediency, isn't it? Because he knows what the elections come out. He knows there are pro-Palestinian candidates being put in seat to challenge Labour. So this is to save his job and to save his party.
I mean, there's no point in the genie back in the bottle there. People have made their minds about that, although I can understand to some ways too. Mike, can I just ask you, so he's said he wants an end to the fighting, this war must stop now. He's spoken a bit about a ceasefire. He has not made it clear. I mean, neither could Wes Streeting or Jonathan Reynolds. I mean, whether or not they are actually going to vote for a ceasefire on Wednesday. I mean, how do you predict this will play out on Wednesday? What do you think will happen?
I actually don't know. I mean, I think what Wes Streeting said is that they haven't seen the final wording yet from the SNP, so they're waiting to see that, then they would make a decision on how they're going to vote for it. But as I've just said, I think it doesn't matter, because Keir was very clear the other day he wants to see an end to the fighting, as does, by the way, Rishi Sunak.
Yeah, but there was this permanent ceasefire, Mike. There was one. Yes. Hamas broke it, and the idea you're going to ask an Islamist terror group to put their weapons down when in their manifesto they want to annihilate Israel. You are never going to get ceasefire. But you seem to trust Hamas in that.
I don't trust Hamas, but I don't trust the Israeli government either.
Do you actually think Hamas wants a ceasefire?
There's been incredible wrongdoing on both sides.
Can I ask you, do you believe Hamas wants? I don't.
I believe that they do want a ceasefire.
What makes you think Hamas wants a ceasefire?
Everybody wants to see the thing come to an end.
They're literally putting women and children
that there's ever been.
Well, they have everyone fairly recently. They kept to it.
Oh, really? They kept it. So why did they kill the 1,200 people?
And rape and behead.
Yes, exactly.
I'm going to just do another little straw poll here now. So Wednesday comes around, as we understand it, the SNP have got, and from what I have seen of it, it's pretty clear. An immediate ceasefire is what the SNP are saying that they want. So there's going to be some kind of vote on this on Wednesday, as we understand it. OK. Does Keir Starmer tell his Labour MPs to vote for or against that, do you think?
He won't do it.
What, he'll just abstain?
I think he won't make it that the instruction as clear as you're saying.
You think he'll...
He tried it once before. He was ignored by 56 MPs and 8 shadow ministers.
Go on, put a tenner on it. Which way do you think he's going to go?
I don't know what he's going to do. But what I do know is that he is very, very clear that he wants to see an end to the violence, because he said that literally 2 or 3 days ago, and that he wants to see a sustainable, peaceful solution.
Belinda, do you think he'd whip his MPs to vote against this motion, or how do you think it will go?
I agree, I agree with Carol on this, actually. I think, especially after the MP candidate with his conspiracy theory about Israel came out and his delay over that. I think.
So you think we might be in free vote territory for them potentially? Well, we'll have to wait and see. Possibly, we'll have to wait. None of us have got a crystal ball, of course, and a couple of days is a long time in politics. Look, thank you very much for that. It's a good start to the hour.